let's start with the continuing coverage here on WION on the Israel-Palestine conflict. It has been hours since Israel woke up to a barrage of rockets fired by the Hamas group from the Gaza Strip. Israel's National Rescue Services say that at least 22 people have been killed so far and hundreds others are wounded. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said, "We are at war." In retaliation to the strike, Israel has launched air raids on Gaza with dozens of jets. In what comes as the biggest offensive against Israel following 2021's 10-day war, the armed wing of the Hamas rulers of Gaza Strip have declared the launch of Operation Al-Aqsa Flood. Hamas has also called on the resistance fighters in the West Bank, as well as other Arab and Islamic nations, to join the battle. The Hamas group says over 5,000 rockets have been fired since the break of dawn. Israeli minister says that Hamas made a grave mistake by launching a war against Israel. Israel's President Isaac Herzog says it is a difficult time for Israel.
قررنا أن نضع حداً لكل ذلك بعون الله ليفهم العدو أنه قد انتهى الوقت الذي يعربد فيه دون محاسب، فإننا نعلن بدء عملية طوفان الأقصى، كما أننا نعلن بعون الله وقوته أن الضربة الأولى من عملية طوفان الأقصى والتي استهدفت مواقع العدو ومطاراته وتحصيناته العسكرية خلال 20 دقيقة الأولى.
Air raid sirens wailed across Israel's south and central areas, including Jerusalem, Rehovot, and Ashkelon. Multiple fires broke out across these cities as the rockets fell over Israel's skies. In Gaza, the militants even claimed taking over Israeli military assets, including tanks and armored vehicles. A Hamas brigade has released images showing what they say is their members penetrating the Israel-Gaza border fence and patrolling on the Israeli side as the situation escalates. Now, buckling up to thwart the incoming attack, the Israeli Defense Forces launched air raids in Gaza under the Operation Iron Swords. Israel's security forces have been ordered to clear the infiltrated towns and to call up the reservists. Israeli army says Hamas will face the consequences and responsibility for these events. Israel's top-level security cabinet is holding a meeting amid the surprise Hamas attack. Meanwhile, the international community has condemned Hamas's attack, including Germany, Greece, Belgium, the European Union and others. Countries like the US and India have also issued advisories for their citizens in Israel. The latest file follows a period of heightened tensions in September when Israel closed the border to Gazan workers for 2 weeks. The shutdown of the crossing came as Palestinian protest rocked the heavily militarized border. Now, critics had slammed the border closure as collective punishment against thousands of Palestinian workers. Meanwhile, the months-long anti-judicial reform protests have been called off in the wake of the latest attacks. Now, for more on this, we have with us Vasu Sharma, who is a PhD student at the University of Haifa.
The situation here in north is comparatively peaceful. However, the situation in southern Israel continues to be grave. it continues to be of concern, especially for the students, for the international students. We here at the University of Haifa has been given the advisory that we should refrain from going to Tel Aviv and other certain cities of Israel. Indian Embassy in Tel Aviv has also issued helpline number that which we should contact in case of any emergency. Apart from that, the students are keeping up to date about the current events going on here. Also, the situation started to the students here started to receive updates around 7 in the morning about the escalation, about the attacks from Hamas, about the rockets, and yes, so far everyone is helping out to each other, especially the students here in North. However, the situation in North is comparatively peaceful, and we remain cautious of the ongoing developments. Thank you.
And now for more on this, we're being joined by our principal diplomatic correspondent, Siddhant Sibil, on the phone. Thank you for being with us, Siddhant. Now, 22 people dead, countless others injured. This Netanyahu has said that we are at war and we will win. What is the latest updates that you have for us on this Hamas attack in Israel?
Well, I can give you two aspects. One is the situation which is unfolding. We can just see from the media, from Israel on social media or on television, that how the attack is unfolding, and it is a very horrific attack, and the visuals which are coming of the atrocities by the Hamas outfit is seen very terrible and very shocking as well. Now, of course, when the attack gets over, it looks like the attack is still underway. The Israeli government, of course, will be picking up the pieces, and what will be the response of the Israeli government is something that the world will be closely awaiting. Now, Italy and Ukraine have said that they back Israel's right to defend, and it looks like that there will be a strong response by Israel. And where does it lead to the Palestinian project? The idea of Palestinian state is something that, of course, looks right now very precarious, given that now Israel is being backed by the international community. In fact, most of the countries are backing Israel, and Israel will leave no stone unturned when it comes to acting on those responsible. The second, of course, is the Indian reaction. We are still awaiting a formal response by the Indian government, but the Indian government has issued advisories for its nationals. And remember, there are 18,000 Indian nationals in Israel, of which 900 are students. You've spoken to some of the students as well. And essentially, the Indian government's response will be the situation of their nationals, the safety of their nationals. And of course, for this, the Indian government will be continuously monitoring the situation.
Absolutely, Siddhant. Yes, the Indian government advising citizens to stay safe and exercise caution and not to venture out. Now, what has Hamas said? Have there been any statements from Hamas after they launched this attack?
Well, there have been some statements by the Hamas leadership claiming the attack, and since the attack, it looks like it's still unfolding. It looks like there will be more statements coming from the Hamas outfit. Now, what we know is that dozen of the Hamas militants had infiltrated southern Israel, and so far what we are learning is that over 500 people have injured and 22 Israelis have died. In fact, the shocking visuals coming from social media of Israelis being kept hostage and their bodies also being mutilated is something that is beyond shock, and it looks like these images will haunt the world for a pretty long time. We also know that there are certain strikes by the Israeli military in response to this development, and it looks like this is something that will be unfolding for next few days and months.
Absolutely, Siddhant. Absolutely shocking. Thank you for being with us and for bringing us the latest details. You will, of course, be keeping us up to date with all that happens. Now, for a more comprehensive understanding on this, our correspondent Jody Cohen sends us this report.
Israel's emergency services say 22 Israelis have been killed and 550 people treated in hospitals for their injuries. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has called this a war which he expects Israel to win. In the meantime, Hamas, which rules neighbouring Gaza, has infiltrated Israel and is reportedly holding several communities on the border hostage, claiming it has kidnapped 35 Israeli civilians and soldiers. That's after Hamas said it launched 5,000 rockets into Israel on Saturday morning, with a further 2,500 rockets later on, including in central cities like Ra'anana, Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, which contains the holy sites. Representatives from the US, Europe and UN have condemned Hamas's attack and affirmed Israel's right to defend its citizens. And the Israel Defense Forces say they are targeting Hamas sites in response. This is Jodie Cohen for WION World is One.
Meanwhile, as the conflict between Israeli forces and the Hamas group escalates, Palestinians in the West Bank are marching in celebration after the multi-front attack on Israel territory.
احنا بنقول لاخواننا في الاجهزه الامنيه والسلطه الفلسطينيه ان توقف الاعتقالات السياسيه وتطلق سراح المعتقلين السياسيين وتوقف التنسيق الامني مع الاحتلال، ونرجع الى مربع المقاومه والعمل الموحد ضد الاحتلال من اجل ان نضع اساس لتحرير فلسطين ولتحرير الاراضي الفلسطينيه المحتله بكاملها من هذا الاحتلال الظالم وهذا الاحتلال الغاشم.
The reactions from the West Bank region pour in after the militant Hamas group from the Gaza Strip carried out a coordinated surprise air, water and land attack deep within Israel territory earlier today. The Palestinians say that the closure amounts to collective punishment is Israel's year-long occupation of their territory. Now, many Palestinians were seen celebrating the attack, jumping on top of destroyed tanks belonging to the Israeli army. As Israel declares a state of war and continues its counterstrikes on Gaza Strip after Hamas militants fired a barrage of rockets towards Israel, the world is reacting strongly to the developments. The international community has condemned Hamas' attack, including Germany, Greece, Belgium, the European Union and others. Countries like the US and India have also issued advisories for their citizens in Israel. UK's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak also condemned the attacks on Israel by Palestinian militants, while supporting Israel's right to defend itself. At the same time, Ukraine has expressed solidarity with Israel while strongly condemning the attack. Russia has urged both sides to exercise restraint. France has also condemned the attack on Israel in the strongest terms. It also reaffirmed its absolute rejection of terrorism and its commitment to Israel's security, while Germany says Israel has our full solidarity and the right guaranteed by international law to defend itself against terrorism. In addition, Italy also said it backs Israel's right to self-defense against brutal attacks. Spain says it is shocked by indiscriminate violence of attacks on Israel. At the same time, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has asked both sides to act reasonably.
Propias del verano, incendio y hasta...